Hello and welcome to my channel, where are the guides for photography. Today we are inside Darktable 3.8 and we are going to deal with a kind of a high dynamic image, or at least we are going to try and make it high dynamic. But before we start, I want to say that I'm using a scene referred workflow with a scene referred workflow module preset. So to make sure that you can follow this video with the modules that I'm using, you can go into Preferences and go for Processing, Set Scene Referred Workflow, and Auto-Apply Chromatic Adaptation Defaults to Modern. And then you can go over to the hamburger menu here and set Workflow Scene Referred. Alright, so this image, yeah, it has a few issues here. It's really bright in the highlights and it's really dark in the shadows, and we of course need to try and fix this. But before we start doing that, I want to say that this image is actually shot under blue hour, and blue hour is of course really dark, so this is exposed for the highlights, and so it should be a bit dark, this image. We shouldn't try and introduce or lift the shadows too much, because that would simply look unnatural. If we take a look at the histogram, we have a fairly good and high dynamic histogram. So we have details in the shadows, in the midtones, but not too much in the highlights. We can try and make that even more detailed in the highlights, but I don't want to lift the highlights too much, because then we would start clipping. Yeah, we should just get started, I guess. So the first thing I'm going to do is to lift the exposure just a little bit. So I'm going to right click here on exposure. That creates a new instance of exposure. The reason why I'm not using this exposure is because I like to have that to fall back to if this exposure doesn't work or something like that. It's just me. You don't need to create a new instance of exposure, but I like to do that. So I'm just going to up the exposure a little bit, and you can see that we really lifted the highlights as well. So let's back that down just a little bit to around there. And then I'm going to go into Tone Equalizer. The Tone Equalizer is a really excellent module to recover highlights and shadows, but you have to be a bit careful when you're using it. I guess for this image it would make sense to try and use Compress Shadows Highlights soft preset, and that does indeed help this image a bit. Yeah, it does actually. But we can also try, for example, the strong preset, and yeah, it does a good job, I guess, but it's doing weird stuff here. And that's the thing with the tone equalizer. You really need to be careful when using it, because you can quickly create or wash out the colors and the details actually. But let's just drop the highlights a bit. We can go into masking and make sure that we are masking it in a better way. You can use the wands here and try for that. So clicking this moves the mask more over to the midtones, and clicking this extends the mask a bit more. So yeah, that might help. And we can try and drop the highlights even more here and go for something like that. Do note that you can try, instead of using the tone equalizer, you can try the shadows highlights module. It's not really a part of scene referred workflow, but do try it anyway. It's rare that it creates any artifacts. I maybe experienced that 3-4 times or something like that, but it's not recommended, this module. Tone Equalizer is a part of the scene referred workflow, but you should know that you can use shadows and highlights module. And of course, you can try the RGB curve or something like that as well. So you're not only locked to the modules that are in the scene referred workflow, but it's the recommended modules that you're using there. So of course you can use a combination of both, but then I'm losing a bit of the dynamic range that we had. So we can try and go for something like this maybe. Or let's see here. Yeah, I think maybe we are going for the shadows and highlights module. So that just goes to show that you can try different modules just to find the perfect one for the image. Don't lock yourself only to the recommended modules, but explore other modules as well. But make sure that you're not creating any artifacting or if it looks washed out or something like that. All right, so let's just continue here. I think we need a bit more contrast. Now, I'm going into Filmic RGB, and a lot of Darktable professionals would argue that you should start with the Filmic RGB first. For some reason, that doesn't fit my workflow. I just cannot get used to doing that, so I'm not starting with Filmic RGB first. But you should know that I guess it's recommended to do so. Anyway, we can try and tweak the white point. So if I go this way, I'm compressing the white point, moving my white point more over to the midtones. And you can see it's not doing too much, but it's not meant to do too much either. If I go this way, you can see that I'm blowing the whites and the highlights. But let's move a bit more over this way. And you can also try the auto-tune levels. So this is what the software sees and what the software wants us to use. But I'm actually moving the white point just a bit more and compressing it just a bit more. And I can compress the blacks if I move this way or lift some of the shadows. And now we are starting to get somewhere, I guess. If I go in, I like to go in here really to 100% just to make sure that I'm not washing out details, because it's hard to see when you're working with fit view. So that's the reason why I go in, and I can check like this. This is probably where the contrast is correct. So I think I'm going to leave it there. All right, so yeah, let's go back to the exposure because we are starting to be a bit too bright here. So I'm going for something like that. Let's go into the Filmic again, and I'm going into look, and I'm going to add just a little bit contrast to around there. And yeah, I guess we have something decent there. We can try, for example, the clarity preset on local contrast, and that actually did a good job. I think I like that. Now, before I'm going to do the colors, I like to go into the correction tab, and I like to do denoise, lens correction, chromatic aberration, and haze removal. Now, there's no haze in this image really, but the haze removal helps when it comes to contrasts. In this case, I think maybe I'm not going to use it. Yeah, let's just use some of it. So I'm going to drop the opacity here to around there, I guess. All right, so now we can go and deal with the colors. So we can go for color calibration, and it's at 5321 Kelvin, and that seems correct to me. But let's just take the droplet tool there. Okay, it warmed it up a bit. And honestly, I think it warmed it up too much. So let's move back down to around here. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's go into color balance RGB. And we are going to add some vibrance. Let's add some contrast. Like that. And let's go down to perceptual brilliance grading, and this is a place where we can also recover some of the shadows or the blacks. So if I go all the way up here, you can clearly see that we are indeed recovering some shadows. We can even go up on the global brilliance grading, maybe to somewhere around there. But as you see, we are lifting the highlights when doing that, but we can go down on the highlights to something like that, and maybe down on the midtones as well. Yeah, to somewhere around there. Just gonna drop the shadows a bit there. And I think that helps. We can go for global chroma, see what happens if we increase that. And now I think it's too much up there, so I can drop the highlights just a bit. I don't want this yellow orangey color. I don't like that, but let's do something like that. And try the shadows here. Yeah, somewhere around there. Let's go for the midtones to somewhere around there. And I can even drop the highlights or the saturation in the highlights if I want to do that. Or I can, of course, increase it as well. So maybe something like that. And that did a good job in the water here. It actually highlighted the reflections. And I think that's fine. Okay, so yeah, this is a good place where we are at right now. Now, it might look a bit too dark on your monitor. My monitor is calibrated. So usually when people are viewing videos on YouTube, it might look darker if your monitor isn't calibrated. So I'm just going to go up a bit on global brilliance, just so we can see the details in the shadows. And I can actually go into the tone equalizer as well, but just let's reset it and just go up a couple of steps in the shadows like that. Yeah, it's not much, but it's too much. So let's drop the opacity. Now, often when doing stuff with modules in Darktable, you can go too far on the sliders, but maybe you don't want to sit and push sliders all the time. So go down to this pencil and drop the opacity. Play around with the opacity. It might save you a bit of work. All right, so it's a bit flat, but we can fix that later. At this point, I want to crop it, and I want to go for a 2:1 universal crop. This is a crop that I really like. It looks good, I think. So maybe go for something like that. Yeah. It's hard to say really what's the focal point here. I guess the focal point is the buildings and part of the sunset over here. So maybe we should go for something like that when it comes to cropping. We are cutting this window, but yeah, let's go for something like this. And let's pull it in just a bit over here. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. And I saw on Facebook yesterday that there was someone asking how to do the crop because they were used to Lightroom. And in Lightroom, you hit the done button when you're satisfied with your crop. To do it in Light or Darktable, you simply click on the title there and it does what it's supposed to do. So it's really easy inside Darktable. All right, so I think we are at a good place right now. Let's see here. Yeah, we can go up just a bit on the opacity on the haze removal, just to get back some of the contrast. And I think it's fine. We could go and play with the color calibration here. We can create a new instance or simply use this one. And we can play around with the channels. So if we want to play around with the red channel and maybe introduce even more reds, ooh, that's too much. Or we can decrease the reds. Just playing around. And I can, for example, remove greens from the red channel. So if I go this way, it looks a bit funky. Let's go the other way. We are introducing some magentas to the red channel. And let's reset this. It looks fine. And let's play with the blues. Yeah, let's not. Let's go into the green channel and maybe introduce some reds in the greens. Or even go down. So it's really sensitive. So you have to be careful. Yeah, maybe something like that. And let's go for more magenta look here. Let's go down to around there. I'm happy about that. And let's play with the blue channel. Yeah, to around there. So this is without the color calibration, and that's of course without the white balance as well. And this is with. We can play with the colorfulness as well. So let's, for example, play with the reds. And you can clearly see what it does. And the green I'm going to leave alone, but let's play with the blues. And I kind of like that. And of course we can play with the brightness. So let's go down on the blues just a bit. And up on the reds just a bit. And that actually helps this image, I think. I'm not sure yet. Just gonna drop the exposure a bit. And introduce some more brightness. No contrast. There we are. Yeah, I think it helps. It did a good job. All right, so I think I'm at the last steps right now. It's a bit bright in the highlight, but let's go into the effect tab, and I'm going to introduce a vignette there. So I'm just going to drop the scale so I can tweak it as I want myself. And I'm not going to desaturate anything. And we can, for example, drop the brightness. And let's just drop the size down a bit to something like that. And let's see, this is without the vignette and this is with the vignette. So it's a bit too sharp. So let's extend the feathering and try again. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's just go back into color balance RGB, drop the highlights a bit. And yeah, let's do the same in the tone equalizer as well. So just a step or two. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm not sure we need this exposure anymore. Yeah, that feels a bit better. So yeah, I guess that's it. Let's check where we started. That would be here. And let's go up here. This is where we ended up. So the last things I would do now is simply do dodge and burn, and I would tweak the sky a bit more. But the dodge and burn takes a really long time for me to do, because I do it, that's the point where I make the image pop. That's dodge and burn for me. So I can change the details, I can go up or down, make it softer, make it more harsh. I can increase or decrease the contrast, I can add color, remove color, all the things that I do in dodge and burn, and it's a really long process. So I'm going to make a video about dodge and burn in Darktable. I've done a dodge and burn video for On One Photo Raw 2022, but I need to make one for Darktable as well, as the process is a bit different. But dodge and burn is a really important part of photography, at least for me. It's an important part of creating contrasts. So yeah, that's the latest or last steps I would do. But for this video, this image is done. I'm happy about it. It turned out completely okay. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you like the video, hit that like button. If you want to watch more Darktable videos from me, hit that subscribe button. And if there's anything you want to ask me about Darktable, hit the comments. And thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.